Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike. This is the Leadership Toolkit. As you know, the definitive podcast to grow yourself, your leadership, your management, your entrepreneurial style, your business, and be able to grow the people that you are affecting within those areas of your life. So I appreciate you taking the time to tune in and join me today. I've got an absolutely phenomenal guest. I'm excited to welcome on the show Mr. Everett O'Keefe. He's a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and international #1 best-selling author. He has The Power of the Published, which is his most recent book. And later on today, I'm going to tell you how you can download a free copy. So he speaks all over the nation. He talks about publishing, the power of publishing, getting your message out to other people. So with that, I am so excited to bring Mr. Everett O'Keefe onto the show. Everett, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, man. Mike, it is so great to be here. Grateful for this. This is going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
I'm very excited. If you would do me a favor and just expand a little bit for our audience, what it is that, how did you get started in leadership? How did you get started in business, maybe as an entrepreneur, and how did that lead you to where you're at right now? I know people would love to hear a little bit more about you.
Yeah, thank you. I think I got started as an entrepreneur the way very many people do, by accident.
Yeah.
And for me, I actually was hired by a company. I had been doing marketing to attorneys and insurance companies and things like that. And I was hired by a company, and they said, "We're going to make you a vocational rehab counselor. We're going to hire you." And quite honestly, I'll be honest, I think they hired me because of who I knew rather than what I knew, because of the networking that I had done. But that started me on a path, because that meant, first I became a professional, and then I started managing employees. Yeah, I had, without any training, of course. And I did that with that company for a few years, and actually managed 3 different locations for them before I decided to head out on my own. And so that entrepreneur journey was me going, I could do this better if I were doing it for myself. And that's what I did. And actually did that career for, 20 plus years. But always had the itch. You get that entrepreneurial itch of, what if I did that? What if I did that? Hey, could I start that? I think we've all been there, Mike. I'm sure you've scratched the entrepreneurial itch more than once.
Certainly, way more than once. And the thing I think that comes up is when you get into that environment, you say, "Hey, I've got this thing and I want to serve these people. I'm going to go do this." Then sometimes it doesn't work. And so you got to go again, right? So let me ask you, Everett, as we're just getting started here, if someone's got that entrepreneurial itch, how do they feed it? What would you recommend? What are the first 2, 3, 4 steps that you would say, okay, here's what you should do to start building that and moving forward into that arena?
I think a lot of it has to do with attitude and risk tolerance. It's like,
Okay.
my sweet wife could never be an entrepreneur. She's a fantastic teacher, but the entrepreneur thing is not in her because of her low risk tolerance. I am a firm believer in ready, fire, aim, or ready, aim, fire, and then aim some more. How about that?
Sure.
And being willing to go off at something a little bit half cocked. That I know that there are some people who are like, I've got to nail every piece down. I've got to think this path through in every little aspect. And I'm impressed for the people that can do that. I can't. For me, it's more like, okay, I've got a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
Let's try it. Let's test it a little bit and let's go, rather than waiting for it to be perfect. And that honestly has paid off multiple times throughout my career and in multiple businesses. Being willing to execute, knowing it's imperfect, knowing that you may have great results anyway, and going for it. Case in point, my first book was this book here called The Video Tractor Beam.
Okay.
and it's dominate your field and attract new customers and clients with online video.
Okay.
This book was just done as a proof of concept, and it's actually a pretty cruddy little book. People won't say that about their stuff, but it's a pretty cruddy little book because I edited it. I did the layout on it. And I don't recommend that for anybody. But this cruddy little book was just a proof of concept, but brought us our first 5-digit clients. It put myself and my marketing company on the map. And it did all sorts of great things for us, even though it was imperfect execution. The important part is that it was execution. And that's
Sure.
where so many people get
Well, I think
stuck.
that's really key is you got to take action at some point. But let me ask you, when you're saying, hey, be willing to execute imperfectly, um, and I've heard lots, there's many entrepreneurs as I've interviewed, and they always say, yeah, take the action, take the imperfect action. I've heard, and you've heard this, right? Perfection is the enemy of progress, right? So how do you know something is imperfect? How do you know it's not right? Or I guess a better question would be, what do you do when you find out that it's not right, but you're already executing? How do you approach that?
Wow. Well, check the ego at the door.
Okay.
Right? It's like realize, oops. And that you're always going to take the good with the bad. And in this case, it's iterate, right? Iterate on it. It's improve it. Now, that being said, I never went back and revised the video tractor beam because at that point, it had done what we wanted to do, and our business had moved beyond that point of needing it to be perfect. And that is also true with a lot of things that people do. Is these things are stepping stones. They are,
Sure.
they're the way across the pond, and you don't always have to go back and check it and correct it. It's what's the next thing? What can I do next that's going to improve my business, improve people's lives?
So would you say it's more important then probably to fall in love with the progress of it? Fall in love, like people always say, but enjoy the journey, right? Fall in love with the progress of it and what's the next thing rather than that one piece.
I mean, I don't know. It's very rarely is a business built on a single thing,
Sure.
but they can be important. I mean, many of our clients, for instance, they're creating books as a foundational piece for their business, and a book will never be perfect. No matter how many people see it, no matter how many editors, there's always going to be some little thing. And even if the book were to be, quote, perfect, that perfection would last about 48 hours because then the business goes, hey, I should have said this. Oh, I want to add this. The great thing is the technology we use for print on demand publishing, those
Mhm.
things can be done. We can go back and correct those things and improve those things. So there are some foundational things that you're going to do for your business that you're going to go back and correct and improve and improve and improve. And then there are those that are just going to get left behind as you move to that next iteration, that
As you
next thing.
grow. Sure.
Yeah.
So Everett, let me there's a couple directions I want to go with this because for one, I self-published a devotional some years ago. I did the editing, I did
Fantastic.
the stuff. And it just, in my opinion, it's still really good. But it's
Fantastic.
no that so one of the things I've had a good friend tell me, and I want to get into this sort of with you because how long have you been doing Ignite Press? How long did you
Yeah,
say?
10 years. This is our 10th year.
Okay.
Actually,
So
11th, I suppose. Yeah.
So how do you, and I've had a friend say to me, a very dear friend of mine, because as I was trying to grow, my speaking opportunities, my YouTube channels, and one of the things he says, well, you need a calling card. You need an actual product. What you should do, Mike, he says, you got all this knowledge on leadership and leadership education. You really should publish a book. And I'm like, okay. And what was on my heart at the time was the devotional. And so I went after that. And it's actually helped one of my faith-based YouTube channels grow. And so I'm still in this, I guess, holding pattern of, okay, well, I do need to publish a book for my business and leadership education and connecting with people on that level. How So there's a couple things. First, I'm going to ask you, how should I start to plan that? How would anybody start to plan that? If you say, okay, we're going to use this book as your calling card, maybe somebody wants to use it in their business to ignite, using Ignite Press, their business and start moving stuff forward. Where should they start to decide, well, here's the topic of the book that I want to do, and here's where I want to start with either self-publishing or using a service such as yours?
Yeah. So obviously, going back, Jim Rohn, I think, is credited with saying, you want to, start with the end in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and think first about how are you going to use this book? What's the purpose of it? And the purpose of it, many people think that when I ask that question, they're talking about what mindset change or whatever has to happen in the reader and what outcome do you want for the reader. But I'm talking about what outcome do you want from the book,
Okay.
right? Is it, I want speaking opportunities? Is it, I want to convert prospects to clients? Is it, I want the increased authority and the expert status that comes with authorship? Because very often those are the most predictable outcomes and the
Okay.
most powerful outcomes for you as the author. And so I think knowing the desired benefit from the book gives you much greater freedom in regards to the content of the book, because that it's the content of the book where people get frozen, right? It's the, oh my gosh, how am I going to organize this? What do I want to convey?
Right. For
Um,
sure.
how, is it going to be good enough? Are people going to laugh at me or get bored, or, whatever it is, all the fears that pop up. But the reality, if you write a book about your business for your brand, okay, it cannot help. There's no way it is not going to elevate your brand. And that's simply because the second you publish that book, you have that rare accomplishment behind you of having published a book, something so many people want to do and never pull off.
Sure.
You're breathing rare air, is what I like to say, and you truly are. And if people never even open your book, if they never even read your book, they're still going to be influenced by the fact that you are an author and that you wrote a book. There's in my book, The Power of the Published, there's one
Mm-hmm.
section that talks about the amazing power of the unread book. If Mike, you know this, so I'm speaking to your audience here too.
Sure.
If if you put your book in someone's hands and they never do anything besides see the cover of it, that book's going to be on their desk or their nightstand or in their bookshelf for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going anywhere. People don't throw books away. It is the most durable marketing tool you can ever create for your
Sure.
business. It's probably the only marketing tool you will create that will outlast you. Unlike every other marketing thing we create, which is stale next week or next year at the latest, this is always there working for you. But that book is a constant reminder. And every time someone sees that book, they go, man, Mike really knows this stuff about leadership. And they may, and by the way, you might have blank pages. You might have only blank pages in that book. I don't know, but they're going to see, man,
It's a journal.
Mike wrote this book about leadership. Yeah, there you go. He wrote this book about leadership, and it continually screams your credibility and your expertise in the space. And that's before anyone's ever read a word of it. So think about how powerful that is before they've even ever gotten to the content. The other thing I think that people need to make a decision about when they're writing a book is, are they writing a book or are they writing the book? And so many people get stressed because they feel like they need to write the book. Like, this needs to be the most creative, unique masterpiece. This will be my legacy. This needs to be my opus. And the reality is if you are writing a nonfiction book for the benefit of your business, if you are doing it to ignite your business and give you more credibility, you need to write a book, not the book. And a book you can write in a pretty short period of time and bring to market quickly and have it working for you this year. The book probably doesn't get written for 3 or 4 more years, if ever. There's a whole bunch of renditions of the book that are sitting on someone's computer, whereas a book can get into the market. And that doesn't mean you write a cruddy book, but it means that you don't overthink your content and you can create something that can benefit your business right away.
That is really good advice. I'd say over and over again, when I'm sitting and visiting with folks, Everett, that like I so much enjoy the conversation because I learn so much myself, and I know that if I'm learning, like you're bringing value to the audience. And one of the when you just said that, and I wrote it down. Are you writing a book or the book? And I think that's one thing, at least for myself, just put myself in these shoes. Like I've been trying to write the book for like 2.5 years, and I'll go and I'll try iterations, and then to write the book. And for people listening to the show, if you're in leadership management, you're an entrepreneur, you're starting to do this, and you've had somebody tell you should write a book, they're saying you should write a book. You're saying you should write the book. And then you got to have just the right software for it. Like they have book publishing softwares. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to endorse any particular one, but it's like, then you got to have the right software and the cover design and all the other stuff. Like to me, that's very impactful, Everett, that like, look, just write a book, share your knowledge with the world. So I'm curious because one of the things that you said, and I was going to ask this, you said you can usually do this in a short time and get it working for you this year. Well, how long should it take? Because it's not 2.5 years, I guess. How long should it take to say, hey, I've got this concept, I've got this idea, here's what I want to do with it. Is there, from your experience, a recommended length that a book should be, and how long should it take somebody to write?
Yeah, and I think this gives people some freedom too, because I think everyone thinks their book needs to be the masterpiece, and we've discussed it doesn't. It doesn't need to be the masterpiece. It needs to impart information and your wisdom to others, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be the masterpiece, and it doesn't need to be War and Peace. The length of a book now, people's attention spans are shorter, and the sweet spot is about 25 to 40,000 words.
Okay.
And in page terms, that ends up being about 120 to 180 pages. And you can go north or south of that without, destroying anything. But the idea is that that length of 25 to 40,000 words is long enough for you to convey what needs to be conveyed. It's thick enough to have weight and feel like a real book in the hand. And
Sure.
It's short enough to be read on a cross-country flight, now that we're doing such things again. And if you go longer than that, then your open rate goes down, right? People are less likely to start it because it's long. And your read rate and completion rate goes way down because people get started and then they get distracted. And then, oh, there's this other book I want to read.
Sure.
And so if you really want people to read your content, and of course, what author doesn't, keep it concise. Like I said, 25 to 40,000 words, thereabouts, is a really nice sweet spot. And it's manageable to write as well.
So how long should it take somebody to do that then, would you recommend? Or
From
your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it depends upon how you want to write that, right? There are some people who are like, okay, I need to go get a cabin on Walden Pond and seclude myself for, 6 months or whatever, and be a hermit and grow my hair out, which is harder.
And that's not a bad thing. Yeah.
Harder for me since I don't have the hair to grow out. Yeah. And I don't have that cool beard like you do. So, and for some people, that's the formula. But for most people, it's writing in chunks. Allie Pleiter is a great author, and she talks about a chunky method of just writing in chunks. I find when I sit down to write, if I take a couple hours in an evening or on a Friday afternoon, I will probably knock out between 1,000 and 3,000 words. And you think about that, it doesn't take very many episodes of that to hit that 20 to 40,000 word mark.
A couple weeks.
If you're dedicated to it, if you decide, hey, I'm going to write a little bit every day, then you could do that quickly. Frankly, most of us in leadership positions and business positions we struggle to devote that kind of time. right? But if you can just sit down to write once a week, twice a week, you'll make pretty rapid progress. But there are other ways. Okay. That's if you're going to write it the kind of traditional way, the more organic way.
Sure.
Another way I love is to write a book around the frequently asked questions of your business. We call this the FAQ SAQ model. So FAQ, frequently asked question.
Yeah. What's the SAQ?
SAQ is should have asked questions. These are
Okay.
the questions that people should be asking if they knew more about the topic. So if you want to write a book with this strategy, it's super easy. Sit down, set a timer for 5 minutes. Okay. Just start writing down every question you can think of that people ask you about your business. And these are questions that you already have the answers to because you answer these questions day in and day out. The answers are already in your head, and you just need to get them out of your head into a document where other people can help you. So the easiest way to do that is you write down these frequently asked questions, then move on to should have asked questions. These are going to be the ones to allow you to show your expertise more deeply. And then grab your phone and start dictating. There's some great apps out there like otter.ai that will do voice transcription with your phone. You can use Google Docs, you can use all sorts of things, but dictate these frequently asked questions, your responses to them. Get this content that's in your head, out of your head. And each one of those questions will very likely become a short chapter in your book. And you can dictate 5 minutes, maybe 10 tops if you want on each question. And each one of those will be a chapter in your book.
That's wild. I haven't heard it put like that. I think that's really good advice. Before we get too far ahead, because I always get ahead of myself, a couple things, especially if somebody's listening on the audio version, you can check out Everett and his company at ignitepress.us. That's IGNITE press, PRESS.us. You connect with him there, get more information on publishing through it. So is it self-publishing or is it publishing through your company?
It's hybrid publishing.
Okay.
In which we can explain, talk about if you want.
Sure.
So
I'll ask that. Give me just 1 second, and I'm going to ask that question because the other thing, so I don't forget, because I put these two in here, and I'll just keep rambling. The other thing you brought up is your new book, The Power of the Published. And so one of the things and you brought this up once or twice, and I'm sure you have some massive wisdom in there, some of which you've already shared with us, but people can download. I told them at the beginning, I'll tell you where to download it. You go to mypodcastperk.com. So that's mypodcastperk.com to download a free copy of your book, The Power of the Published.
Hey, thank you so much for plugging that. Yeah, The Power of the Published is all about how to rapidly author a book and how doing so will impact your business and your life. And it was my favorite book to write because of the stories in it of all the crazy ways that books have impacted people's businesses. It's a hoot.
Ways that we probably haven't even thought of. So
it's crazy.
Let me get into, and I'll ask you. So if somebody was saying, okay, look, I want to establish some more authority. I want to use this as a media bump for my brand. I want to, I'm even thinking about ways in other businesses that I've worked in or with, like the FAQ SAQ thing is like, that's brilliant to me. And it's so simple, but moving past that publishing, if someone engages you and says, okay, I'm going to go to Ignite Press. And just so everybody knows, this is not just like a plug show. Like I'm interested. Everett and I connected, and I always like to talk about like, what are the things that are making entrepreneurs successful? What does this? And one of the things that you just brought up is something I'm not familiar with. So can you explain that?
Yeah. So hybrid publishing sits in between traditional and self-publishing. And we like to think it embraces the best of both worlds. Traditional publishing, many people will have heard, is a real challenge. Mm-hmm. First, it's incredibly hard to get picked up in traditional publishing. And even if you do, there are some downsides that not everyone realizes. First, you're selling your intellectual property to the publisher. They own your intellectual property, and your ability to use that property in the future may be impeded.
Interesting.
They may have first rights to any derivative works, any sequel works, etc. Then, if you want to buy your own book from your publisher, you pay too much money. When they sell your book, you get paid too little. And speed to market is almost non-existent. It's very common for traditionally published books to take 18 months to 2 years. And lately I've been hearing even 3 to come to market. And for most entrepreneurs, for most business people who are creating a book for their business, that kind of timeline is not palatable. So traditional publishing has its challenges. And a lot of people who go traditional publishing do it for the perception of marketing. They think they're going to get great marketing. They're going to be, I'm going to be on Oprah, and I'm going to go on this radio tour and book signings and all of this. And then they get disappointed when they find that the publisher really doesn't do all those marketing things that you hoped, and they're really relying on you to do those things. So traditional publishing has its challenges. Self-publishing, I think, is wonderful. Self-publishing is great because you own your intellectual property. All royalties flow to you. You get your books at cost, and you can do whatever you want with them. But the challenge is you also have to do everything, right? Or arrange and manage everything. And if you screw up any one thing, the whole thing can be a disappointment. So in hybrid publishing, we sit in between, where we provide the professional copy editing, the layout, the cover design, the publishing and distribution, but we do it in accounts our clients own, so that all royalties flow to them. They get their books at cost, and they have complete ownership of their content. And time to market, speed to market is much faster. If someone comes to us with a completed manuscript, we're usually publishing it 90 to 120 days out, something along those lines.
Okay. So, well, that makes sense. So then if they do that, and without, again, for everybody listening, anybody listening now or later, without getting too pitchy, hybrid publishing, what is that? Because like I've self-published, I get it. It's blood, sweat, and tears, and then it's
Sweat equity.
certainly, yeah. So it's for sure sweat equity, and then like I had to invest some, get someone to do the cover design, make sure the layout is proper. So there's some pieces there because you got to find somebody that knows. Is there a sort of standard cost associated with hybrid publishing?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the fees are all over the board.
Okay.
In some publishers, what they do, some hybrid publishers are akin to traditional publishing, where they still own the content, but you pay a premium to get your books at a lower cost or to get a higher royalty rate. We're closer to self-publishing, so where our client owns everything. But that also means there's no back end to what we do, because we don't make anything on the book sales, right? Sure. That type of thing. So we just charge a fee for service. We're probably mid-tier. We typically, as we're talking now, our fees are usually about $11,000 to $15,000, depending upon the project.
Okay, sure.
And there are companies that will do it cheaper, and there will companies that will do it for 10 times as much money.
I've heard plenty. I have had people reach out in the past and say, "Oh, we'll get your book out there," and so forth, and then they share this number, and I'm like,
"You're like, wait, people will pay that?"
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. It's shocking.
Yeah, I've heard some numbers lately up in the 150s, 160s range for some packages, and so that's fine. It's right for some people.
So what are some things as you've come? Let's just look at business as a whole for a minute, Everett. What are some things that you would say? 2, 3, 4 things that are tangible items that you could say would be applicable to any leadership role or any business. What are some things that you would say have made you successful in business and in the entrepreneurial role you're in?
Well, I will say one, and this is a lesson I learned from a psychologist who said that entrepreneurs have to have a certain level of entrepreneurial ADD. And I am not clinically ADD. Some people in my family are. But there is a certain amount of ADD that has to be there for an entrepreneur. You have to be distractible enough to look to the side and see something that you hadn't seen before. So you have to
Okay.
be distractible enough to see that, but you can't be so distracted that you can't focus and execute. And so I think that being, allowing yourself to be distracted a little bit makes a huge difference, but you can't engage too far down that road. A second thing for me, and this was absolutely critical, was engaging in a mastermind.
Okay.
In 2013, I was at a conference and learning about a piece of software, and someone came up to me and my business partner and said, "Hey, we ought to do like a mastermind retreat or something, just to learn this software better and get others together that would do that." And that started a mastermind group that now is 11 years old. And
Wow.
we've traveled, we've gone to Tahoe and Carmel and the Dominican Republic and Vancouver Island and Nashville and Aspen, doing retreats. But masterminding in general is one of the most valuable things I think anyone in business can do. Getting together with people who are on a journey, on the same journey, they may be further ahead or further behind, getting together to connect, to share your successes and failures and your challenges is one of the most valuable things anyone can do. So highly, highly recommend that for anyone.
So let me ask you, when it comes to mastermind, I've interviewed a few people on the show and they brought up mastermind. I have a friend of mine. She does a leadership consulting agency, leadership channel. And she says, "Hey, I'm starting a mastermind for leadership and so forth." Give me your take on like, does everybody need to be in the same industry? When you're starting a mastermind, how do you find the right people? That's question one. Question two, and we can come to it, is then what's the framework to set it up? Because like I hear you say this, and here's why, and I'll repeat these questions. But when I hear you're like, "Oh, we've been to this place and that place and this island," and it's like, okay, is this really just an excuse to take a vacation, Everett, or is it? So who are the right people, and then what's the framework to set it up?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I recorded a whole course on how to create your own mastermind, and it is sitting on my hard drive somewhere
Okay.
that I never released because we got so
Really?
busy publishing books. Yeah. But someday maybe I'll dust that off. But I think that there are several different ways to go about it, and it doesn't have to involve retreats. Retreats just make it more fun.
Sure.
Actually, retreats make it more fun and allow you to bond better. Our mastermind group, many of us are like family members because we've done those things together. You
Well, it's
spend,
real human interaction. There's no replacement for
yeah,
that.
you spend some hours on a boat in Monterey Bay watching whales together, and you bond in a different way. Also, those types of retreats give a chance for you to have a much deeper conversation. One of our members said, he goes, "You know what I love about the retreats is you get to finish the conversation.
Oh,
When you
so
go,
powerful.
when you're in a 1 hour or hour and a half meeting someplace, or you're networking over dinner or whatever, or you're at a conference, you get to start lots of conversations, but they never truly finish. And if you're going to spend a few days with people that, like you'll be like, "Hey, that thing you said yesterday, I got to thinking about that last night. And here's what, like it just gets a
Sure.
chance to do it." But a retreat is an optional thing. It's great. What we do is we just meet every 2 weeks on Zoom for an hour and a half. And as far as who those people are for a mastermind group, no, they do not have to be in the same industry. I think it is the easiest to create if they are, right?
Okay.
Um, but usually you need to make sure you're not competing. So I would even say, like, let's say you are in waste management. Okay. Let's just take something completely removed from what I do. If you are in waste management and you can make a connection with someone who's in waste management in a different area, and you multiply that out, and pretty soon you've got, I don't know, 5 to 10 of you, whatever, and you meet on a regular basis, you cannot help but reap massive rewards from those conversations, because when you have a challenge, someone has already encountered that challenge and solved it. When you go, "Oh, hey, I found this new tool. Someone else needs that tool, or they've already explored it and decided it was overpriced and unnecessary.
Sure.
Masterminds are really good and bad for that shiny object syndrome thing that so many of us encounter.
Yeah.
But that's if you're in a like industry, and I think that that's the natural thing to do, is to create that.
Okay.
But if you could create a mastermind group that was multidisciplinary, that had people from multiple industries, as long as you share common challenges, which many executives do, right? If you're an entrepreneur, get together with other entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter what industry they're in. You're still dealing with payroll. You're still dealing with taxes and insurance and liabilities. You're still dealing with marketing and product development and fulfillment. You're still dealing with the same challenges, just in different industries.
Staffing and accounting and yep.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah.
So, well, and I think it's valuable that there are a lot of subjects like we do get tapped into our own industries because we go, oh man, I feel that, right? I'm familiar with it. But at the heart, like business is business and people are people too. So like when you're talking about it being, across different lines, I think that's valuable. So what's the framework you guys use? You said you meet every 2 weeks on Zooms. Let's talk about the retreats. What do you, how do you, because that's fun stuff. Like if somebody's listening to this and they say, okay, I want to connect with somebody else. And I think you are so spot on when it's like, oh, hey, let me grab coffee with somebody, or let me grab lunch with somebody. And you get so far in a conversation, but then at the end of it, you both are headed different directions and you're running businesses and it's that everyday life. So at one of these retreats, what's the layout that you guys do for that?
Yeah. So remember we talked about Ready, Fire, Aim. Ready, Fire, Aim is exactly what we did on our first retreat. It was, okay, where are we going to do it? We found this Airbnb near Yosemite. And we were like, what are we going to talk about? Oh, I don't know. Let's figure it out when we get there. It was kind of that bad. And the thing is we literally sold it at the conference that we were at. Like at lunchtime, we went, yeah, we should probably do that. And later in the day, it was like, hey, we're thinking about doing this retreat at Yosemite to talk more about this stuff. Is that something you'd be interested in? And people are like, well, yeah, I'd be interested in that. And you're like, they go, well, what's it cost? And we literally said like $663. And that number was completely pulled out of the air, really just to cover the basest of overhead. And it was intentionally this odd number, right?
Sure.
Not 997 or 1997 or whatever. Now this is the first one. And nobody asked, well, what's the curriculum? Nobody asked, what is this broken into modules or whatever. It was, hey, you want to get together in Yosemite and we're going to talk some more about this stuff and kind of knock our heads together and see what we can create with it. And people are like, yeah, that'd be cool. Let's do that. So literally, I want to say it was like 3 weeks later, we were having our first retreat. And by the way, yeah. And you've probably been to enough conferences where people are saying that if you're an expert, there's a certain development triangle that you go through to get people. And it starts with, okay, free offering, right? Lead magnet down there at the bottom of the pyramid. And then a cheap product, maybe a $10 or $20 or $30 product.
The $7 download.
Yes, exactly. And then you kind of step it up, and then it gets to a course. Then it gets to, I don't know, webinars or whatever. And the very peak is what? At the very peak, it's usually a live event.
Yeah. Here's my live event, and for only $49.95, for $4,995, right? You can attend front row seats, or everybody can come for $1,000. Who can't have and then
exactly some flavor of that. Well, so we skipped all that. We just went straight to the live event. We just said, hey, let's just do this thing. Now, we didn't even make any money on the first one.
Sure.
But we didn't need to, because we made family. Like honestly, we made business family rather than making money at that point. And we weren't even planning on having a mastermind group. It was just meant to be an event. But of course, everyone was like, okay, what are we doing now, Everett?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we need to have a mastermind group. So, but I will tell you the format we did, and we've done a lot of these now. So here's a quick format to help you. First,
Yeah.
spend 50% of the time playing. Okay. No more than 50% of your time can be content, because people will start to glaze over. And you need to allow time for people to breathe, for people to enjoy where they are and what they're doing.
It's good advice.
The actual format of the content is so easy. I learned this from Ed Rush, and I went to a mastermind group he did. And what he did is he started with a whiteboard, a blank whiteboard at the beginning of the first day. And he said, okay, let's go around the room. Tell me one thing you want to get out of this time here, or one topic you want to discuss in this time here. Starts writing down topics. Pretty soon that whiteboard is full. Okay.
Sure.
You have just created the outline for all of your content for that time period. Okay. Because you now have all these brains in the room, and somebody said, I want to talk about client acquisition. And you just lead that conversation. You're like, okay, John asked about client acquisition. John, first, what have you tried so far? What challenges are you having? What have you found works? And then pretty soon people in the room are all contributing over that. And pretty soon you can have an hour-long conversation about client acquisition, whether you know anything about client acquisition or not. That's because awesome. You're not the smartest person in the room. Someone else is the smartest person.
Let me recap for anybody who may just be tuning in, and some of the things that I'm hearing you say, because the framework, and we've covered a lot of ground in this, man. We've been to some different places. Everett, I appreciate it, man. There's so much we can fit into 45 minutes or an hour, but we got onto this mastermind track, and you said, okay, hey, because I asked, what makes some things that make you successful? You said entrepreneurial ADD. So I got to look around. I got to be able to see other things rather than, ultimately you got to focus on what's ahead of you, but you got to be able to see side to side. And then you talked about this mastermind group. So one thing I want to frame up for everybody listening to this is, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a manager, you constantly have to be learning and growing, and you have to be, allow yourself to be susceptible to other people's ideas, right? Because so often you get into leadership, and Everett, you'd probably agree with this. You get into a leadership role and everybody thinks all of a sudden you have all the answers. And it's like, no, you may have to sort of present yourself that way for a little bit. But the biggest thing I'm hearing you say is just like, you've got to allow other people to influence you, and you have to stay growing, constantly growing. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I hope people are hearing that and take that from you.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And some of that growth is going to come from reading books. Some of it's going to be from attending conferences. It's going to come in all sorts of different ways. What I love most about the mastermind format, and it depends, people run them do things differently. By the way, 100 to 200 people in a room is not a mastermind. And
I was going to ask, how many people are you having as a mastermind?
Yeah, I like between 8 and 20. Any bigger than that, and it's just not manageable. You need to have space where people can contribute, where they can get a word in edgewise.
Sure.
Which you and I probably are comfortable talking a lot and not letting words in, but there's got to be enough to have synergy and energy, and that's where I would say eight minimum, but 20 max. And we meet every 2 weeks for 90 minutes on Zoom. And we know some people won't make it because they're busy. They're business people. They won't be able to make everyone. And sometimes we'll have guest speakers, but most of the time I call it just all skate. Like remember back at the skating rink, it was like, okay.
I ran a roller rink for 12 years. So believe me, I remember.
Come on. Are you serious, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
got into broadcasting. I mean, that we'll go way off on a tangent. The reason I got into broadcasting was because I was a live DJ at a roller rink for 12 years.
Oh
And
my
I was
God.
like, in my mind, you'll appreciate this. We're probably, same generation. I was going to be the next Casey Kasem. I'm like, I'm going into broadcast. And when they forced you to take TV broadcast, the irony now that I'm interviewing people every week on video, they forced me to take TV broadcasts to get a degree. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm a radio guy. And now here we are. Now here we are. So yeah, I remember it all skate. Sorry, long story to
Well, and
respond.
now you've had 1,000+ shows.
Yeah,
So you have probably accomplished more on your private shows, especially when you think of the format, the long format, than you
sure.
could have ever done in radio or TV where, the format's compressed down for commercial breaks, right?
Yep.
My goodness.
It's
My
crazy.
goodness.
I want to ask one other question here as we're kind of coming down the tail end. Everett, so let's say whether it's at a mastermind group or through your publishing company and book editing and so forth, how do you encourage people? Because again, we get into that leadership role and we're constantly kind of out front with the sword. Let's go, right? We're headed down this path. And so, um, how do you consistently encourage people to bring and nurture new ideas into a company, whether it be in publishing, in business, at these mastermind groups? What are some things you might do to encourage people in that manner?
Wow. That's a tough one. With our publishing clients, I don't think I have the same opportunity with our publishing clients because they're usually coming to us with a manuscript and a mission that they already
Okay.
have that they're moving forward on. With the mastermind, it's just such an amorphous blob, and I mean that in a really good way. Um, you've got a group of people that are all unique individuals with different, unique things they bring to the table. We
Sure.
share a lot of the same challenges, but we come at them differently. Um, and I'm just grateful because in our group, someone will say, "Hey, I just read this book and I learned this from it." And you're like, "I haven't read that book. I've never even heard of that book, but wow, that sounds amazing." I think that a lot of learning can come from that. And the mastermind group definitely we all open each other's eyes as far as the scope of what we do. Now, you have to be careful. Sometimes things can become echo chambers, I suppose, right?
Sure.
But yeah, it's pretty. I'm blessed, and that's one of the reasons I just feel so strongly about mastermind groups.
No, it's really good. So as we come to the tail end here, like I said, we've covered a lot of ground. I so appreciate your time.
Yeah, I
We,
think we
we
were
were
talking about publishing at some point.
Well, we were talking about publishing and the business. Speaking of
Leadership.
which, leadership and growing people and masterminds. I love the format you shared for that. Couple of quick reminders for anybody who may be interested in hybrid publishing. Make sure you check out ignitepress.us. You can connect with Everett and his company for more info. And as I mentioned, sort of Everett's gift for us all today, which I think is awesome. You go to mypodcastperk.com and you can download a free copy of The Power of the Published, which that's your latest work, correct? Or
I've co-authored
working
some
on
books since, but
okay.
yeah, this
So
is the one I think is most useful for people as they consider, should I do a book? And if I'm going to do a book, what will it do for me?
that's awesome. So definitely check those out, folks. And Everett, any final thoughts to take us out for this afternoon?
Yeah, when it comes to the whole book thing, I think that people have great opportunity there. And I like to say, you want to be the one who wrote the book, not the one who read the book. And we give people an opportunity to be the one who wrote the book. In fact, we help them
That's awesome.
become best-selling authors on the journey. And I am so privileged because I get to help bring other people's wisdom and message to the world. I get to help support that. And that's a sacred privilege, and I'm doing it through we're doing it through the most timeless medium, invented. It's like the Bible is the number one best-selling book ever. And there's a reason for that.
Absolutely.
And books are just an incredibly powerful medium.
Well, it's a really, I love that. And it's, I mean, it's a very pure form of communication when somebody is like, hey, I want to get this idea out and I want to put those ideas on paper. It creates that pure connection. It makes them real. And so you know,
It does, and a book communicates in a way that I don't think anything else does, because people read it at defenseless moments. They read it when before they go to bed, or on the toilet, or on vacation, or whatever. And there's no format like this that allows you to pour your wisdom into someone else's mind, if for such a length of time and in such a manner. It connects so deeply, and there's still something mysterious and precious about books. They're even in this age of every other thing, books are still mysterious and precious.
absolutely. I love it. So Everett, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your wisdom with the audience today. I really, really appreciate you. Next time, maybe we do the 3.5 hour podcast we were talking about beforehand. So
Thanks, Mike. This has been fun.
absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and take us out. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to a close of another Leadership Toolkit. As I mentioned, you can check out ignitepress.us. You can get download of Everett's book at mypodcastperk.com. That's the power of the published. I would highly encourage you to do so. He shared so much wisdom and insight with us today. Do me a favor and throw some thumbs up on this. Make sure that you like the episode here. That's one way that we continue to grow the podcast, grow the channels around it, and so forth. And please, if you know somebody that this could help, if they need to hear the message, if they've got an idea on their mind and they're right there ready to publish something, look up Everett's information here and connect with him, connect with his companies, because people have so much to share with the world, and you could be that conduit. So share this with somebody that needs to hear that message today. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to tune in and join us. I'll see you next Wednesday, 12:05 Mountain Time. And until then, stay great.